Hey there, welcome to another episode, I guess I should say, of Hey Hun, You Woke Up, Victim Voices. And today I am very, very happy to introduce to you my friend Dave Vaughn. Dave has been a consumer advocate and fighting against multi-level marketing since 2018. He is also a teacher in Taiwan, and he has a background in economics, and he is someone that I can always count on to give me some really interesting content or to give me interesting ideas or to bounce things off of. He's just really a rock. And I am very pleased that he agreed to be here today. So welcome, Dave. Thank you so much for
Hello, everyone.
coming. No, it's early in the morning for you.
It's not too bad. 8 a.m. I can do. That's no problem. But happy to be joining you, Alonda.
I'm always glad to talk to you. And we were just, getting a little bit caught up since the last time we've spoken. We speak, of course, on social media and all of that, but being able to, have these one-on-one talks, it's not as easy. So to
Right.
start this interview, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, go back into, your backgrounds because some people may not know exactly who you are.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to ask you, Dave, is why did you start speaking out against multi-level marketing?
It really sort of hit me in the face. I was dating someone here in Taiwan, and I didn't know it was an MLM at the time, and I also didn't really know what an MLM was. I was never personally involved in the MLM itself, but I had a relationship with a guy here in Taiwan, and it really sort of it opened my eyes that the impact this kind of organization has on people around the world. They were involved in a company known as Market America, which thankfully you have shared some content and information about in the past. I think some of your audience might be familiar with the guy on Last Week Tonight, John Oliver's segment on multi-level marketing, the guy shouting at the gravestone. That's part of this organization, shop.com, Market America. It's very prolific here in Taiwan. And has expanded through other parts of Southeast Asia. But that experience really sort of highlighted for me just how these systems operate. It's not just the economic and financial impact that it has on people. It's often the social, psychological effects that it has. And they're long standing, right? The relationship that I had, I lost it in part because of the conflict and friction that's caused by these MLMs to sort of challenge you to take control of your time and make sure that you're not wasting it with fun activities or people who are not income producing elements of the business. So I mean, mind you, when I was in the relationship, it was something that I was trying to incorporate into our life because I knew that it was really important for my significant other, but I failed at doing that because ultimately I was just trying to be a consumer, right? I was just trying to, there was an instance where my school needed to purchase some new Apple TV products in order for the projectors to work. So I was thinking, oh, my boyfriend runs this shop.com platform. Why don't I try to get him some extra, whatever is IBV points for the month? I can support him that way and make sure that I help two people, right? The school is being supported in that way. I expense it as well as my boyfriend gets these extra points. So I would try this. But when I tried to make the order, it was of no interest to him because I wasn't signing up. I wasn't creating a new sort of unfranchised business. And yeah, I didn't get that kind of what I was expecting. And that really sort of surprised me of, I thought that's kind of what this was. So I dug into what the dream was. I was looking on YouTube for other information. Reddit was sort of the main resource at the time of people sharing their stories. There's one really good post at the time about shop.com that really sort of revealed the high pressure situation that many people are under with the teams that are involved in this organization, which I'm sure you're familiar with within Team Beachbody. I do recall though, for you in Team Beachbody, it wasn't such high pressure. it was someone you were living with that had got you involved. Is that correct?
It was a neighbor of mine.
A
My
neighbor.
husband
That's
and
right.
I had moved, and this person also ended up moving, and we were on the same floor, just on opposite ends of the building.
Right. Yeah. And there wasn't a lot of pressure from them to perform, I assume, once you got started.
I put the pressure on myself,
Right.
you know.
It was internal.
I just self-induced everything.
Right. Right. Because I imagine part of that was that you believed that it actually worked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
10,000%. Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's the part that a lot of people miss in this is, and I was talking to someone last night as well about just MLMs in general. They in Taiwan, they don't have Reddit. They do use Reddit. Obviously, they have access to Reddit. It's not like in mainland China where you are sort of restricted from the internet. You have to use a VPN in order to get outside to other news sources or information. Taiwan, it's totally free, but they don't. A lot of people don't rely on Reddit for a source of information. They use this platform called PTT, which it's like Reddit, but it's like a black screen. It almost runs on like, like coding platforms where like you're typing in. I don't know if you use computers like way back in the early 90s, like where you had to like type in the command log for like C colon slash
Yes.
slash, and
Yes,
then
I
you
did.
it looks like that. I don't know why. I guess because everyone is really sort of geared towards technology here, and that's sort of like a callback, or if it's a safe and secure facility. But a lot of young people use it, and apparently MLMs are just blasted on there, and everyone knows that they're a bad thing. But the issue with people getting involved in MLM is that they just see it as a last resort, right? This is something you do if you have nothing else, and it's like that's the worst. That's the worst thing to try when you're at that sort of point in your life. But you will look to a friend who joins an MLM, and you're like, oh, okay, well, you have nothing else that you can do right now, right? This is the only thing that you have left. So it's unfortunate to hear that it's gotten to the point where people are aware that's a problem, but they only know that it's a problem like this much. They don't really see the full extent or damage that it can cause, and then for many people it does cause. So yeah, for my ex, that sort of was the point of awakening for me, of realizing how it was spreading throughout their life. They were considering quitting their job. They were looking to get involved in the airport, like just consumer or working in the travel industry or some sort of like shipping line industry. That they were interested in that. But many of the jobs that are involved in the airport, they actually don't allow you to have this kind of like side gig. Because I mean, if you're working at a consumer desk and you're also like trying to market your doTERRA oils or whatever it might be, it doesn't look good for the brand of the travel industry. So they actually don't want their employees working in these MLM things. So that sort of pushed him away from doing that. And yeah, it was starting to infect his own life. Like in Taiwan, it's very common for people to live in multi-generational homes. So you have these like 4, 5, 6-story homes, and on each floor there are different generations of the family living there or relatives. So you might have the parents who own the building and they live on the first floor. They don't have to walk upstairs or anything like that. There's a kitchen, and then behind the kitchen there might be their bedroom or some sort of garden as well. And then above that might be the oldest living there, and their children might live on top of that. And then you might have the second in the family living above that. And then on the top floor, you might have an ancestral sort of family space that might be like a place. This weekend is Qingming Festival. It's a festival where you typically visit the tombs of your ancestors, and you tomb sweeping is the English name for it. So it's similar. In fact, I think of it like Taiwan's Easter, in the sense that it is sort of like this renewal, this rebirth kind of thing in the Christian faith, but it's more connected to Taoism and
Okay.
whatnot here. But these houses are very connected. Confucianism, like filial piety, making sure that you respect your elders and that they are sort of this main source of information and wisdom for young people, and that showing them respect. It's really integrated into society here, and it's not as pronounced as it was in the past. And I think Taiwan has modernized in a lot of ways towards this sort of like capitalist infrastructure that we have in Canada and America. But it was really eye-opening for me when I was trying to address this problem with my ex. We had broken up at the time, but I was just sort of sitting down. I created this like 26 PowerPoint slide, because that's the way that I did things as a teacher, of like, hey, this is terrible. Like, look at all of these things that were mentioned in a lawsuit about this company. Like, this is how I thought I should do it, is just sort of like address the facts of the problem. It doesn't work. I'm sure many people in your audience already know that, but you can't approach this with logic. You have to approach it with thoughtful, caring questions that are very slow in approach. And I felt there was an urgency to try to get him out of it, because I was sort of seeing the destruction that it was having with his family. Like, he had told me that he had addressed his parents and said that if they aren't going to support his business, then he no longer wants to have anything to do with them. He doesn't want them in his life. And that's hard because he lives with them. So like,
Wow.
he was like 28 years old, and this was a decision that he was making in order to advance his business, because
that's very common in MLM to drop relations with anybody who's quote unquote not supportive, because they're negative. They're the haters.
My understanding is that they were a core foundation of his why, right? They were the people that he wanted to be able to send on vacation. But the fact that you are willing to risk that relationship in order to get what you want for them, in the thought that like they'll understand once I become a millionaire and can send them on the vacations and they can enjoy their retirement, right? It's just, it's hard, but you start to believe it when you are so integrated into all the people that are around you that are telling you this thing, that this works. You have to have faith in it. You can't give up on it. You have to keep finding people. You have to believe that this product works, so other people will follow you.
Well, I think you said a very important word, and that is faith. Because so everything about this hinges on belief and your faith that it's going to take you to where you think you want to be. For that time freedom, financial freedom. So I do have another question for you.
Yes.
I think you kind of addressed it, but I want to make sure we do fully address it.
Yeah, let's circle back to it.
How pervasive is multi-level marketing within Taiwan? I mean, because I know here in the US, it's like, you throw a rock, you're going to hit somebody that has been involved. It's not like it's gosh, what is it? Robert says it's 1 in 6 houses or 5
That's
houses.
Right.
Yeah.
It's twice as common here in Taiwan. It's 1 in 3 houses. Yeah. And I mean, part of that has to do with the fact that people live in homes, multi-generational homes. So if your aunt or uncle is involved in it, right, then there's a good possibility that they're also living in that same building, or at least assigned to the residence that you are. They might be living in Taipei, but their main residence is back in countryside Miaoli, so they might be registered to that household, and that's where the statistic is coming from that way. But yeah, it's twice as common here. It's something that people try. There's a number of reasons for that, right? There's lower salaries that you get in Taiwan, right? People often say that they can't take a vacation in Europe because it's too expensive, so that they'll vacation around here and build up money to go abroad to Europe. It takes like 3 or 4 years to be able to afford that kind of vacation when you're young. Whereas I believe in America and Canada, it tends to be a destination that people can travel to within 6 or 8 months if they save up. So it takes a lot longer to get your money to go further in Taiwan. And I think the other part is the over indexing in a way on like tech sector or doctor / lawyer professions, right? Like a lot of your parents want you to be doing these really good jobs, and that leaves a lot of people that don't get those really good jobs. So you're willing to try just about anything that's going to get you that respect and honor of your family. And I think, yeah, it's hard to do that, but MLM kind of tries to offer that promise to people. And it's also a gateway to many other countries in Asia. Taiwan tends to be a little bit friendlier to corporations or things that are disguised as corporations. And it's easy to translate a lot of your material. So once you get into Taiwan, then it's pretty easy to get into Malaysia and Singapore. Thailand is a stretch because it still requires translation into Thai, but it tends to be a launch pad for a lot of groups. And then it's also that gateway into China. You sort of, Taiwan is a stepping stone into China for a lot of companies. And in order to operate in China, you have to operate very differently. I know like ANTIMLM reclassifies a lot of their distributors as like supervisor, manager type roles. They effectively still operate in the same way, right? Like you just find employees that you log time for, that you're working for the company, and that's how you get paid, is based on this like log time. But essentially what it is like, are you still buying the product, and how much are you buying this month, and how many people have you brought in as your organization to get paid? They just sort of rebrand it in a way that's fashioned to support the Communist Party of China. So
I want to bring this back to something that is happening right now, and that is the advance notice of proposed rulemaking, ANPR, which is, like I said, happening right now. In terms of the FTC is considering a potential rule regarding deceptive earnings claims, not just by MLM, but we're going to just focus on MLM.
Right.
So if the FTC creates such a rule about deceptive earnings claims, or even their income disclosures, if that's part of it and everything, how do you think this will help people who may be considering joining one of these quote unquote opportunities?
It's all about changing the pitch, right? I think that's what the rule will do. At least that's my understanding. Because if you're only targeting the earnings claim, the real time that the FTC is really focused on or concerned about is when someone is signing up. You're not really changing the core fundamentals of the business plan, which is, I think, what a lot of people take issue with, right? They come to this realization, oh, it's not just Mary Kay, or, oh, it's not just Arbonne, right? It is all of these companies that are functioning in this multi-level pay structure, and the incentives that they create for people in order to leverage and advance their business, right? It's reliant on seller recruitment, which the sellers are the buyers in this case. So I think it helps to regulate that pitch period for MLMs. And really, I think the essential element that it is being considered is timing. Should it operate like a franchise, in the sense that you have 7 to 10 business days or 7 to 10 days to make that decision whether or not you want to take this investment. I think the same thing sort of sticks for it wasn't franchise, the business opportunity rule. Yeah. It's 7 days for that, 10 days for the franchise rule, I believe. 7 days for the business opportunity rule, which, I mean, was prompted by MLMs, right? The FTC was getting this overwhelming influx of complaints from people about MLMs. They were like, well, let's look at this. Let's broaden it. Let's not just look at MLM, because we don't want to look like we're sort of targeting it. And it came out that like 17,000 comments later from the industry, a lot of them copy paste sort of format style. And they didn't exempt MLM, but they sort of set the bar high enough for a lot of MLMs to sort of escape purview of the rule. So I think if there wasn't like functional, they ask questions about disclaimer, but I don't think disclaimer really matters at the end of the day, right? That's not going to slow people down. That's not going to take them out of the hot coals of the pitch. You need to remove people from that. You need to be able to give them some time to look up, does this company really seem legitimate? I've never heard of ASEA, or I've never heard of OneCoin. And you look into it, and as people are speaking out, which hopefully they are, I think you're going to make a more educated decision, right? You get pitched this by someone usually you trust, or at least you have some sort of affinity towards, that's going to make you feel like I can believe that what you're telling me is real. So you don't want to lose the social credibility that you have with that person by saying, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't really sound interesting to me. A lot of people sort of get put in that situation, and MLMs thrive in that environment. But if you can really sort of disconnect people from that kind of emotional appeal of that moment, it does a lot to affect their bottom line, which they're relying on this cycling of recruits.
It's interesting that you brought up the business opportunity rule because of the cooling off period, so to speak. And
Yeah.
that is something I do believe is needed, because whatever this rule might be, if it is in place right now, we don't know what it could contain. But I
Right.
think that we can add to the conversation of things that we think that it should contain, or that we would like for it to contain, that would be helpful to people. And I definitely believe having that cooling off period so that people actually look beyond what the person who's pitching it to them, or the company videos, or any of that, and that they hear more of the other side of like what is really going on here, especially looking at the likelihood of being quote unquote successful. And by successful, I mean a livable wage after, all of your expenses. And I think that you saw there, I don't remember who I was talking to. Oh, it was Doug and it was Bill, when I brought up the spreadsheet that I have for Beachbody and showed how many bags of Shakeology you would need to sell in order to make $50,000. And that's not even considering, the expenses or anything. But I think it'll be very important for us to think about, when I say us, I mean people who speak out against multi-level marketing, what sort of things would be important for people to have as a takeaway, to be like, okay, I've been pitched this, but now I have this information that they gave me that I should look into, and
Right.
what that might include. And I don't know what that kind of a toolkit of, like, before you join, basically, here's a checklist, go through the checklist, sort of a thing. Does that make sense?
It does. I would say two things to that. So the first thing would be what the business opportunity rule also included. So there was that cooling off period of 7 days that was proposed. In addition to that, they wanted you to include any legal disputes that the company was involved in, which, I mean, reading the comments on this business opportunity rule, it's probably like a very niche thing that people do. I'm sure the FTC probably has like 3 or 4 traffic views on a lot of these comments. I dug into some of them because I was like, I should understand what people were complaining about last time to sort of get a sense of how I can adjust my comments this time. But they were they were like, this will destroy everything. We can't function in this way. So that one instance of yeah, I think we should get to that. I mean, Robert covers it much better than I can in Ponzinomics. But the business opportunity rule had said you need to include the litigations. And a lot of people were complaining like, oh, well, every company has lots of litigations. It would be completely irrational for us to be able to keep track of all the lawsuits that our company gets because people are sued all the time. I'm like, I think that's quite reasonable if you're going to be getting involved in a business to know sort of, is this business going to collapse within the next 3 months? Is it under FTC investigation? But besides that, there was also, you need to give references. I think it was 6 or 10 people that were involved in the business opportunity before that are under you in your downline. So you can contact those people and see how the business is going for them, so you get a more realistic perspective on it. Because the FTC is really focused on this term of net impressions. Like when you walk away from the business opportunity pitched, what is the net impression that you have of this business and your likelihood of success? And if that is completely divorced from reality, right, that's where the FTC should be getting involved. That's the legal term that I think that they follow. So it was any litigation, the references that you have. There is also keeping record of any claims that you have made, which again, this is addressed in a lot of the FTC questions regarding gig network, education plan, whatever this large umbrella thing that they're offering a rulemaking for. but that's included in questioning as well. So there were 6 in total. I'm trying to rhyme off the others off the top of my head, but I think those are the 3 core elements, along with that cooling off period of making sure that people had that 7 days to process this information. So again, there were people sort of pushing back, saying like, if I give list of references, I might be out cutting my lawn one day with my shirt off, and then people start showing up at my door asking me about the business. I didn't agree to that. Like, why? That invades my privacy. It's like, no one is going to do that. No one is just going to walk to your house and ask you about this business opportunity. They have like these irrational fears. If anything, you might get a phone call, and
Right.
it's most likely going to be at a reasonable hour. But I mean, the vast majority of people won't call. Instead, now we have the internet. So you just go on and you search for information from people that have been involved. But it tips you off to the fact that, like, hey, maybe I should do this kind of due diligence on this type of thing. I think that that's going to be enough than having to require that you list out contact information for a bunch of people that are in your downline. But
Well, I think giving their social media handles, I mean, because that is
right,
the way that people get in touch with each other, you know?
right.
You don't need to give a phone number or anything.
I don't know how effective that's going to be. And I mean, with the turnover that's in MLM too, like the handles that you're probably giving out, you're probably changing those like every week, because the people are cycling through, especially if you're in the top and you're trying to recruit that downline for you. But yeah, it's still like, it does enough to make people think this is a little bit more involved than just going to the mall and signing up as a membership for some company, right? I should be taking a little bit more time to think about this. And I think the FTC recognizing that that's important, and that it's involved, right? It happens for franchises. It happens for some of the other educational programs that are offered and are regulated. So it's not unreasonable. And that brings me to the second point of the FTC. The main driver, and I think Bill touched on this when he was on your stream, is the FTC can't make an order if it shows that it's going to impact the business more negatively than it benefits consumers. If it's going to impact the business in a more negative way than it benefits consumers, the FTC will not make that new rule. So we need to be careful in crafting our comment that this is going to end MLM if this happens, and it's going to be so good for everyone.
Yeah.
That's not technically the approach you want to take, right? Because the FTC can't make rules on that basis. And I think legitimately, if the MLM is operating properly, if it doesn't focus on recruitment, if it is focused on consumer sales, and it is ultimately offering a product that isn't all hype, but is actually benefiting the customers that are using it, then sure, that's not the target of this rulemaking. Right, but the problem that we really need to address are at least that segment, which I hesitate to point out to any sort of like beacon of hope that I have for any specific MLM company, but those MLM companies that operate in the sort of more respectable way, at least, will have the incentive to operate in that space, because we can't get to that point of regulating them until we sort of resolve this question of, well, how does the FTC step in when it could jeopardize the business of these companies? So,
Well, let me ask you this question. So if there's some rule in place, how do you see that changing, or would it change? The distributors, when they talk about the alleged opportunity, when they pitch it, when they're on social media doing live streams, when they're doing reels,
right.
TikToks, whatever, how might that have it alter, or do you think it will alter the conversation?
I think you're asking this question because you know it won't. You have been like a staunch advocate of the fact that TikTok came out with this huge press release, and I think you were in the like announcement article saying like, this probably isn't going to work. Like, I have very
Yeah.
little faith in this turning out. And you were right. Like, TikTok hasn't taken that action. Actually, this past week there was a new article saying like, hey, TikTok, like, you are supposed to be doing something about this, and you haven't. So I think realistically, it might not change a lot. And it will probably take, once the rule is enacted, which, I mean, realistically, that comment period started in 2006. The law didn't release until 2012. the business opportunity rule, and it didn't even include MLM. So like we're talking like 2030 by the time we are in like comfortable space of being able to sort of say like, does this work or not? Which sucks, but that's how these things work. But I think in the interim, right, a lot of steps have been taken to educate people, to make them more aware. It has to be making a difference because these companies are constantly pushing back, and it's constantly creating more content for people who are speaking out against the industry to sort of point to and be like, look, like they're not doing anything to really help customers or consumers. Their bottom line is focusing on maintaining the integrity of their pyramid-like structure. And making sure that they can keep bringing in new recruits that are going to believe in the dream that they're trying to sell. And I think that's what we are trying to sort of function as, right? The FTC will come later with really sort of enforcing and putting the policies in that really change that. But what we're doing as someone who's commenting on this forum is really sort of advancing that education, right? We will have this resource to point to, like, look, when the Federal Registrar came out with this, just look at all of the information that is there, right? You'll see that many of the comments that are made by these other people were not really important. But like when you look at the really substantial evidence that's listed there, right, that's coming from people that really understand how this system is operating and the damage that it's doing for people, right? There's records and information, your spreadsheet about Beachbody and how much you have to spend in order to meet the commission eligibility requirements for the company, right? That's what's really important. So I kind of went off on your question, but I think the key point is, yeah, it's probably not going to do the difference that we want it to. No one's going to stick to the law in those reels or lives that people are having, right? You're going to have the same compliance issues that you have now. And MLMs are going to say, like, we're going to stick to this rule. Like, you see so many MLMs saying, like, 70% customers. Like, that's what we need. We need to make sure that everyone has at least 70% customers. And, like, that's a misapplication of the rule. I think Peter Vandernat, who is, like, this celebrated figure that many people don't really know of within MLM, but he's been like a main reason why cases against MLM companies have really sort of been successful. Doug Brooks is a huge figure, but Peter was involved in the FTC cases, and he really understands what's going on in the back end for how these government agencies are operating. And he was explaining just how this actually functions and the difference that these organizations and the roles that they play in Washington. So getting to the question at the bottom.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, that's timely for this question.
Right. I mean, Peter has the better view than I ever could. And I haven't even spoken with Peter personally. I know Bill has a really good relationship with him. He's co-authored papers with Peter. But what happens when millions of people are giving their money to a concentrated top, and that top needs to secure their place in that organization, right? They have loads of money. What are they going to do with that money? Well, I mean, political campaigns are pretty expensive, right? You need to be able to fund all of those people that are working for you. You don't want to have to sit down and author all those bills for yourself, right? You want to take information that people are going to give you. And like me as an anti-MLM advocate, I'm not going to be writing bills because I have a job. I also, like, this is not something that I make money from. This is only something that I really want people to not really suffer from. But these organizations have been able to amass, like, what's his name? Joe Mariano, the president of the DSA, making $800K a year. Like, I mean, I'm not touching that at all, right? That's not what I'm making, but he's making this money because he goes to Washington and he says, hey guys, I have this really good idea. Back in 1973, remember, like, we really wanted to regulate this industry. Well, here, I have this really good plan of how we're going to regulate the industry and protect, like, Amway and all those things, and make sure that all these scam businesses don't get counted as MLM. And we really clearly define what an MLM is versus a pyramid scheme. And they claim to be of good faith and being like, hey, we want to help you. And it's not for me to say that they know and they fully understand that they're committing great evil in the world. I think for them, they think that, no, this is a great opportunity that I really want to see other people get involved in. And I think they get like these brief moments of like, hey, this doesn't work for a lot of people. And the only reason why we're making money is because we're able to convince a lot of people to join. But I think they wake up in the morning with this sort of deep faith in the fact that like, no, this is making a huge difference for people, and we celebrate them all the time. So I think government is a really hard place to make this changes, because a lot of them rely on this. And to take the counter to this of like, imagine a politician who is going to speak out against MLM. It's very easy to knock them off of that pillar by saying, how can you go against someone running their own home-based business, right? This is an entrepreneur. Why are you against entrepreneurship? You're taking away chances for people to be making money, right? In a capitalist society, which, I mean, the American dream relies on that capitalism, right? You can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and make your own money. The moment a politician is sort of brought into question for challenging that idea, you don't survive that. So I think MLMs are positioned in a way that is a big win for politicians when they support it, and only cost them when they speak out against them.
Well,
So.
let me ask you this and get your opinion on it. Okay, so these comments are being made, and I know because I've gone and looked at, not only have I made several comments, including a bunch of links to articles, but there are people who are speaking out and, sharing their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the various comments that people are leaving could lead the FTC to more closely scrutinize overall the MLM industry? Maybe not like today, but that kind of like moving forward, would it cause them to go like, we should look at this further because it's deeper than what we were addressing here?
Right. I mean, if I was like drinking my positivity juice and I was really hoping that like this is going to make a huge difference, I would think the FTC would read those comments. They would realize how massive this problem is. They would realize that they're understaffed and under-resourced. They would go to Congress and they would say, we need to create a commission that is going to specifically address these problems, right? That's ultimately what I wish would happen, because how do you go about exercising not exercising, but exorcising this like metastasized cancer from business, right? I mean, Doug DeVos was the leader of the business, what is it? The business organization, the business council, I'm trying to remember the name. But like that was his direct line to Washington through that. And he had sort of built this sort of free enterprise. I mean, Amway celebrates the free enterprise day when you like get to leave behind your like 9-to-5 job and you finally get to retire into the Amway business and just rely on the thousands of people that you've recruited into the empire to feed you grapes from the altar or whatever it might be. I think realistically, it would be nice if the FTC would read these comments and be like, wow, like this problem is so widespread. But I can't see that they don't know this already, right? Like when the speakers were speaking at the conference, and Bill did a great job of getting a number of FTC officials. Some have left the FTC in that time, but like having them share their thoughts and concerns during the public comment session that was held on was it 15th or 17th of February? The presentation that they gave on the concern for MLMs, they know it's a problem. And they know that, I mean, it would be lovely if we had John M. Taylor's actual data and resource that he had used to sort of make those approximations so we can update it and build from there. But I mean, ultimately, like Robert says, it's like, it doesn't take long, right? You look at an income disclosure statement, you say that this year, 90% of people made no money, right? And then you carry that forward. And as Bill says, like the turnover shows you that those people that are at the top stick at the top. And
Right.
a lot of people are cycling through at the bottom. It doesn't take long. It takes like 7 or 8 years before the time you realize that like that 90% that was here this year, in 8 years' time, right? They're still there, and you're representing like a massive loss of people that had tried to join the organization. And unfortunately, it's not just in the US, right? I mean, it's all over the world. So you don't really see that into market, out of market, the pop and drop phenomenon that John spoke about in his Unmasked feature on MLM. You don't really get a full sense of that suffering, but it's there. And I think that the FTC is aware of that, but they feel like there's not much they can do about it. So it really helps to have on the Federal Register this story and information, right? Because you always have it to point to and be like, listen, you have been told this information. You have people on staff that had to read through these comments because that is your duty as a public servant. I don't know how it's going to function if the world really sort of takes advantage of it. As we can see, it's a bit slow on the uptake, but I mean that's with everything, right?
Yeah.
You're in school and someone gives you an assignment for 2 months to finish. Your first thought is not what you did and finish right away, right? Like a lot of people take their time with it and they collect information. I think that that's good too, right? You're trying to find that information. To that point, I recommend that people pop on Instagram and just like even the past week, just look at like income, millionaire club, hashtag, financial freedom, like any of those posts, you're going to find MLM posts that just as examples of recent examples of earnings claim problems that the FTC is wanting to be more aware of, and they could easily sort of put a task group together to really sort of understand the scope of this problem, but they want us to do the homework for them. So I'm fine with doing that. But
one of the things I included in my statement was from Beachbody was the top 10. And I want to say I went back to 2016 and
right,
forward, and a link
right,
to, and a lot of the names stay the same. Some of it changes, but
right,
they're still in the top, less than 1% of all of Beachbody overall, but just the top
right,
10 people. So
right,
I'm kind of thinking that if there is something like that, like the top 10, if that's published with other MLMs, if other people would put links to that, I think that would definitely help show that those people who are there stay
right.
there. And it's all the suffering is going on below that.
If you can find like the conference brochures or pamphlets that are handed out at the major events, right? They typically have a list of earners. That I did an analysis of one for Market America, and that's sort of where I made the realization that they rely a lot on the Asian community in America as well as abroad, but they are severely misrepresented at the top income levels, right? So they're the entire foundation of the economy for shop.com. They're the main buyers in the program, and that helps them rank up, but it doesn't help them rank up to the point where they're at the top of the organization because of the function of the group, right? I think people can do that, and I think it's very valuable to dig into that information, because it really sort of brings like, I'm using the company information, right? This is not me making things up. It takes a little bit of time to sort of break it down, but when you do it, it's undeniable, right? I'm sorry, like they might talk about how like a lot of people just don't want to try in these organizations, but if you point to these like systemic issues that are just on account of it being this type of organization where you're constantly needing to find new people to believe in the products, and that's where you get these problems. And they're persistent, they're prevalent, they're pervasive. Like you can't get rid of it. So,
Well, keeping along with the same vein of thinking about a potential of having a rule here in the US, how do you think that could help people globally and help them from becoming involved in MLM? Or do you think it will help people outside of the US, reconsider getting involved with MLM?
it helps. I mean, it's hard for me to say. Again, the person I was speaking to last night just randomly about this, they had said, I don't think that it really matters what goes on in the US. I think it does. It's ridiculous to think that these regulators aren't speaking to each other. They're not taking the same approaches. I think, again, in that conference that was last May and coming up again soon, hopefully there's an announcement for that. But hearing from Italy, hearing from Ireland, and the officer there, he wasn't in government. Hearing from Canada, hearing from the US, right? They're taking slightly different approaches, and they have different regulations on it, but they are communicating with each other. I don't think that this is the first time that they've heard these names or have contacted with each other.
Yeah.
This is something that is on their agenda among like a list of like 800,000 different other things. But it's hard to ignore this type of thing, right? The DSA hates to report real numbers about the industry because they know that the pain that is being caused, and they'd rather just sort of minimize that reality. But you're looking at like 20 million people in the US. 20 million people is not something you can just shake a stick at, right? It's something that you need to actively try to silence. So I think for a lot of the people that are trying to sort of make a stink about anyone who is speaking out against these companies, right? The pro MLMers that want you to stop what you're doing. They don't have a lot to point to because it's causing harm for millions of people. So I got off of your question a little bit, but I wanted to make that point of just it doesn't. It's really hard for you to stop and not. Again, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Looking at the comments, but yes, if I return to your question, would you mind if I just have a peek at what you said? How does it affect them globally? That friend, I think, is correct in some ways. It's not going to be the same role of what we do, what the FTC does, but it does a lot to change it, right? China isn't necessarily a force that people look to for regulation advice, right? The policies in China are there, and no one's really looking at it and being like, maybe we should adopt that here. But countries are doing that for the US, right? The US is a leader in that sense of how do you regulate a space like corporations? And it's such a powerhouse in that sense. The previous president had revised the corporate tax law, right? And that caused a lot of countries to be like, how do we respond to this, right? So if corporate taxes are going down in the US, right, we need to react to that. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of our headquarters here in our country. I think if MLMs are regulated in a certain way in the US, and it has a lot of benefit for consumers, which is ultimately what we're driving for, right? And ultimately, that's what the FTC is going to act on. I want people to make money. I'm not anti-business, right? I don't think anyone is. And the fact that you get painted as that by anyone within the industry, it's rather ridiculous. I want people to be able to make a living and be happy with their family. I don't want them to be doing it by scamming people. And I think that a lot of people around the world have that same idea. And if that can be made clear, and the FTC takes clear action against these companies in that way, that's done in a favorable way that still respects the market. And just as Robert is really trying to sort of push people towards is stop calling these things a business.
Right.
Because a business doesn't work by only relying on the people that are selling the product to buy the product, because by definition, those are two very different activities in business. But MLM is like, no, they're the same, right? It's just we do it the same thing, and I'm sorry, if that's what you're doing, that's not a business.
Yeah, our distributors are our best customers. I mean, that should be worrisome and not something that you hold up as like this is a fantastic thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That should be a red flag. Well, let me ask you this. What backlash do you think we will see from the Direct Selling Association and MLM companies, from those of us who fight against MLMs, who are, we are pro-business. We want businesses to thrive. We don't want businesses that are unethical and that are causing consumer harm. That's right. Where we stand is consumer harm is a problem, and MLMs are harming people. So how do you think that they may try to combat what we say?
It's a good question. I think that there's a couple things, right? One thing they can do is they have this massive sales force that they can not control, right? It's not like, ooh, like we're going to get you to go out and comment on all of these YouTuber accounts and say these things, right? I don't think that they work in that manner. And I don't think anyone is saying that they do. But they control a lot of the environment and space to allow for certain behaviors and habits and things to take place. And I think their response will be, well, if these people are going to go after us for these things, then we have no problem if some of our reps want to spread information about the people speaking out, right? I think that's how some people have moved out of the MLM space, is that it just gets very hard, or sorry, the anti-MLM creator space, is that it just gets very hard because you have these people that are really wanting you to slip up so they can launch a lawsuit against you, or they can figure out a way to silence what you're saying, because that's ultimately, they hate when people know the truth. They hate when, like, the worst aspect of their business, which is the majority of their business, is presented to them in a way that they don't like, right? And I think they're really going to sort of push back against a lot of the stories that are put there, or they're going to sort of blanket address the concerns, just like they've been doing for decades now, right? Like, as these concerns are put forward to the companies, they push back in a way that is emotional and is the way that we were just addressing, right? You're against business, you're a dream stealer, you're someone who's always negative and doesn't really sort of see the benefits that you can get from this type of business, or you don't really know what you're talking about, or you're a failed distributor and this doesn't work, right? I think that those types of attacks will continue to be used in response to anyone who speaks against it. But I mean, I don't really care that they're going to do that, because it's not, at the end of the day, against my image or my credibility of myself. I'm not trying to build up something for me. I stay as a blind account as possible, but I also sort of want to make sure that my name is out there in case people question the legitimacy of my story and what I have to say, so they can look up and find that information. But if they're coming after people, I think it's going to be ineffective. And I imagine at this point, a lot of companies have sort of learned that's not the route you want to take, because it just adds fodder to the story of us. So that's one thing. I think the other option that they may take in terms of backlash against us is that they might really try to push through bills at the state legislature that really look to cripple the FTC orders that come in. And I think that's the danger. I mean, they have already done that, right? But they'll just step up those efforts. I think in the US, you have this glorious 50-state system where every state has its own kind of vote in how it wants to run its jurisdiction. And then you have the federal government. And the federal government does have certain powers, but these MLM companies have people that they can easily reach out to in any state house. So I think they'll bring the game to the local level, as opposed to only focusing on the federal level, I imagine. And we just have to we have to be ready for that sort of thing. That would be my approximation. Again, as someone who's not American, it's hard for me to officially say that's how they could operate. But they're gonna fight tooth and nail to make sure that the money that they've made for decades in an unregulated space stays that way, because they don't want people to take away that pie.
I do want to acknowledge what Angel said about what baffles me about MLMers is the total loss of understanding the difference between criticism and hate.
Right.
Because that's all that y'all are just haters. And it's like, we're critiquing the industry with problems that we see that are unethical practices, that are problematic practices that we believe are harmful. That's very different than being just hateful and vile. And what I always find interesting, and thank you very much to my moderators for taking care of whatever was going on, because that was like on passive stuff that I saw going
Mm.
on. And I'm here to interview, Dave. So thank you all for handling that, because they are so quick to name call anyone who is speaking out against that thing that they believe in so fervently.
Right. Yes, and I think on that point as well, it's this, like Bill was saying, that the winners stick around, and the winners sort of propagate this attitude and atmosphere and idea that like the people who have any problems with this just don't understand the system, or are just angry and spiteful of it not working for them.
Right.
Right. So then this gets propagated downline to the people, and you're listening to your coach because they're the business leader. They're the one who has the vision and idea of how to get you from your now to your why. Um, they just repeat it, right? So
Right.
it's not like they're actually thinking that you are a hater, but it's like it's the programming of their understanding. And I hate to use those words because it doesn't necessarily work in that sort of like, oh, type it into the computer and now it's in my head. But a lot of us are easily swayed by people that we trust. And if people that we trust are saying that, like, if people are coming to you and saying this, they have everything wrong, because it's going to work for you. You just have to put the time in it and believe in it. Because look, I thought it didn't work, and now I have 30 people under me, and I'm making $100 a month, right? Like it burns slow for those people, but like you can kind of demonstrate that, like, oh, there is success in this. But again, you're ignoring a lot of the realities when you're saying that, and you're just echoing a lot of what you're hearing. So
Right.
I think it hurts when you first receive that comment, because you're like, no, I'm trying to help you, why don't you understand it? There's nothing you can really say in that moment to those people that are that hot in that moment of being like, you're just a hater, and I can't believe you're saying these things. I always cross my fingers and hope that, like, I hope there's someone in your life that can really sort of sit you down and walk you through all the questions that you have about regular jobs, but also just sort of the awful things that are in life, and help you question like what you're facing in your business as well, because that's the fastest way to get out. I mean, the reality is a lot of people don't hit that point until it's like this brick wall of like, I can't do anything. But you also are a bunch of money in debt. You have lost a lot of your friendships, and there's just nothing left that can really help you. And I hate when people have to get to that point to get out.
Yeah, because I mean, your social circle transforms, because
Mhm.
the people that you hang out with, your family, friends, and everything, it changes, it alters. And all of a sudden, you're now only hanging out around the people, even if it's just online, but those same people who believe in the same thing, the same dream for the same company that you do, and everybody else is just wrong. And that becomes very, very dangerous. And there's many people I know who there's friends and family trying to pull people out of that mindset. And once you are entrapped by it, to wake up from it's not easy. It's
Mhm.
very, very difficult, because you are being psychologically manipulated and psychologically damaged, and you don't even know that it's happening to you.
Right.
Let me ask you this, Dave. For the current ANPR that's going on, why do you think people, like the people who are in the comments, like commenting in the chat, just people that we know, that we come across, people who know someone who's been in MLM, they've lost family or friends, they have lost family and friends because they were in MLM. Why should people leave a comment?
I think so. 2 points. First point, it's not a vote. Okay, so we don't need to get like 80,000 people to comment in order for it to make a difference for our side, right? So we shouldn't see it as like we need as many people as we can to write a comment in order for us to win. Again, it's not about winning. It's about making sure that consumers get the protection that they deserve, and they're not getting it if this industry is unregulated. The second point is, I think anyone who has been affected by these companies and really wants to feel like, I don't want my children facing this, or I don't want my friends to have to encounter this, or I don't want someone I don't know having to go all the way through university, getting to their 4th year of university and sort of being face to face with an Amway rep who's saying, why are you going to university, right? Like, why don't you try this new thing? And you believe that, you follow that, your life is now completely on a different path than what it should have taken. And most people are going to recover, right? Or you're in recovering throughout that process. But why? Why do we need to sort of sit by and not do something about this? And I think that's my pitch of, if you put your comment in and if you share your story, and that's all it is, right? You don't go through and find a bunch of evidence. I mean, that speaks for itself, and especially if a number of people do that, right? Because then you see, oh, it's not just Forever Living, it's not just Young Living, it's not just Avon, it's not just Pampered Chef, it's not just Tupperware, it's not just Mary Kay, it's not just Beachbody, it's not just Market America, it's not just Amway, right? It is all of these organizations that operate under this similar structure. This is a persistent and prevalent issue that is being left unaddressed. And we can't just say, oh, it's only the illegal MLMs that are operating like pyramid schemes that we need to regulate, right? It's all of them. It's prevalent in all of them. They're making these earning claims. They're making lifestyle claims. They're undermining the health of the individuals that are getting involved. They're using deception in order to get people to enlist in the programs that go beyond the earning and lifestyle claims. If the FTC sees this and sees it in a number of different comments, again, it's not the number, but it's what people are putting into that comment and on their story. And keep it honest, keep it authentic, keep it about what you experienced. I mean, it would be like the FTC took what was on Reddit seriously and took action against that, right? There are tons of stories on Reddit that should make a government take action, but a government's not going to take action on a Reddit group in terms of the push that's being done there. But they can take action on what's reported to the Federal Register. So my hope is that people care to comment in order to share those stories in the right place. Unfortunately, it has to be that kind of organization, but I can't imagine the FTC not taking action if what's on Reddit was on the Federal Register.
Now, I do want to share with people, this is Michelle Carpenter's site, and on it, it has a link to a quiz that you created, which I thought was, great. It's kind of like a BuzzFeed quiz, right?
Right. Very simple, and it's just sort of giving people direction, because the FTC, it's only 28 questions, but it's designed in a way that tries to keep it try to reduce the focus. So if you want to comment effectively with the FTC's questions, you can do it this way. But again, at the end of the day, and I think Doug is really sort of pushing this as well, is if you share your story and that's all you're doing, that makes a huge difference. If you don't have the time to sort of sink into a proper, like, professionally tailored comment, that's far and above what we can ask for.
Oh, okay. It went to a different tab. Hold on, let me get the
Gotcha.
because I want to go through the quiz too. Now, where did it go?
It's just a 10-question quiz. I set it up on this website. That, again, I am not a professional in this space, so don't assume that I could never design a personality test, because I haven't gone through that kind of training. But it's using the same sort of infrastructure. So it's just asking you a couple of questions. Have you had experience as an MLM consultant or distributor before? Have you had an experience as a consumer of MLM products before? So this question is sort of catching you if you said no to the last question, but also as a distributor, are you consuming it? Do you consider yourself a member of a community of color and or historically underserved community? There's a question that specifically addresses this in the set of FTC questions, so I wanted to make sure that it was there, because there's concern with them targeting minority groups in the US. Do you have a legal background? So a lot of questions related to the importance of regulations. Do you collect screenshots from MLM representatives? So are you going to have evidence in order to support?
And I'm just going to say no, because I know there's a lot of people who don't, and I know there are people who do, but in this instance, I'm just selecting no.
Sure. Would you say you're more focused on advertising by representatives or the companies themselves? So this is just sort of helping you
And you can
tailor.
do both. So we're going to
Yes.
do both.
And then do you have experience or records that pertain more with earnings or lifestyle health claims? So the records that you are keeping, sure, you can do both. Are you a current small business owner? So some of the questions we're asking about whether or not this will impact other businesses outside of MLM, how will they make that impact? Like if you can speak to that experience, right, that's going to be useful in this report, because the FTC doesn't just want to know about the problems. They want to know what are solutions to fix the problems that you are identifying. If you're a small business owner, you can kind of speak to those aspects.
I'm going to just select yes.
Sure.
Why
And then
not?
have you previously reported claims to the FTC, Truth in Advertising, or other bodies before?
And I'm going to say yes.
Sure. And then do you consider yourself a content creator, an audience member of anti-mlm content, or neither?
Can you do both? Can you do oh.
No, it was just one.
Okay.
I guess ultimately if you're a creator, then the assumption
You
is
do both.
yeah. So lifestyle claims, it filters you towards certain options just based on the responses that you get. I believe some of the weighting is a little bit off. I still need to go in and fine tune some of it. I get a report of just all the people that have been answering, and if I'm seeing like it's binning people in a way that isn't necessarily conducive to how I thought the test was going, I'll make some changes to the metrics, like the count that they associate, the weight that they associate with the responses. But this sort of outlines what you can focus on in your questions, and then the type of evidence you might want to be focused or offering in your response. So again, it just tries to help you streamline your comment and know what kind of things you should be addressing.
And again, I'll put Michelle's link in there. So if you have not been to Michelle's site, you can visit it and you can take Dave's quiz to help you. If you are so inclined to make a comment on the ANPR, you can do so, and the website will direct you to where the ANPR is located.
Mm-hmm. And Michelle's done a lot. I know that she has some fabulous ladies that translated into Spanish. Elaine, I believe you've had Elaine on your channel as well. She translated into Tagalog, and then I had a friend here in Taiwan help me out, and then there was also a member in the community on Twitter who also helped to translate. There's a simplified Chinese text, and then there's a traditional Chinese translation of the question. So there's two different characters, which I mean is mind-boggling to me, because there's like there's more than 38,000 different like letters.
Wow.
You can classify them as letters in Chinese, and like they have a simplified form and a traditional form, and some of them are the exact same, but a lot of them are very different. So it's just I'm struggling, and I still have not mastered learning the language, but yeah, someone helped with that translation, so I'm very grateful for that help. I mean the FTC, I mean you wish a government agency could just sort of like plug it into a system and it's already translated for people, and I mean Google Translate does a decent job, but at least this way it's showing the effort that we want to put in to make sure that consumers are aware of this, and that they can offer their comments and experiences of what they did, because ultimately that's really what we want to end, is that attitude of like, oh, I just need to move on from this. This was a terrible experience, but I just need to get past this. But the reality is like this keeps happening for millions and millions and millions and millions of people. We need to start speaking out about it, because it's a system issue, and when it's a system issue, it gets ignored, and we need to stop ignoring system issues.
And I think that there's going to be a French version. I believe that I saw in the group chat that somebody was asking about, like, do you need help with it to be in French, which I think would be fantastic.
That's great.
The last question I have for you, because I want to be respectful of your time, because, you know, you have your day to get in, you know,
it's okay.
Go and do your thing.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for someone who might be sitting on the fence? They're thinking about commenting, but maybe they think like, oh, you know, I don't really have much of a story, or my comment's not going to really make any difference. What advice do you have for that person?
I think the reality is, Roberta has created a podcast, and she has decades of content that she can do, right? You've done the Hey Hun, You Woke Up series that I think I'm currently a part of right now, but there are so many stories, and they're all similar, but also so different in terms of how they've impacted someone's life, the way that they made their way into someone's life, right? Your story may not have any of the sort of like, oh my gosh, I suddenly realized I was in a cult moment. But they all have aspects of the truth that the FTC isn't addressing, that the government is not acknowledging in the actions that they're taking against companies. And if we can put this in the right place to point to, hey, this is happening, there's something that needs to be done about it. These are some of the ways that I think are going to make a difference if you do this. Please take action on this, because I'm tired of seeing many people fall for something that's not going to work for them, and other people who are involved that really want to believe it can work, but need to constantly invest in deceiving people in order to get them involved. I think, yeah, that's my main pitch. It is hoping that people are willing to just sort of share what they had gone through and put it in the right place, in front of the right eyes, to be able to take the appropriate action against these companies. Because Lena Khan isn't going to go on Reddit to read a bunch of stories.
She has other things to do.
Yes, but her staff will look at these comments. And I think even if it's, you've told your story on Reddit, you copy and paste it from there and pop it in a Federal Register comment, excellent. Like, big thumbs up for that, because I know a lot of people have told their story before. They might listen to audio files, right? Like, I could take this or a podcast that I did previously about my story, but I don't think that is going to swing the needle as much as having something in text that other people can also sort of reference and look at. So if you've written out your story before, copy and paste it from there, post it in the Federal Register, and that's a major thing you can do. And then do what you did. If you want to go back to it and you want to be able to put a more substantial comment in, offer a second comment, right? Because it's not limiting you from that. It's not limiting your IP. So I think that's an important lesson as well for us to learn, is that it doesn't need to be perfect when you do it. You have a chance to go back and make some revisions, or approach the question slightly different and offer your thoughts that way. So.
No, I mean, we can leave as many comments as we want to. That's why I've put in, different articles that I've been, collecting and just like search for, and a lot from
Right.
Truth in Advertising, and just, different things. And some of them are categorized, some of them are lumped together, but it's like, basically it's to give her staff more to look at that there is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think don't spam the comments. I'm not really worried about people doing that, but I mean, if you fall into those bad habits of what MLMers might do, I wouldn't just sort of throw a bunch of content on there. But the important thing is at least get one comment up there. It's really going to help share the reality of what people face in these companies. And I think that the stories of people in those experiences, and the very sort of multifaceted experiences that people have had, really are going to help direct the FTC towards change.
And we have until May 10th to leave comments. So if
don't leave it until then. Put your deadline as like April 15th, right? And sort of set that as your deadline. Don't put it as May 9th. I'm going to sit down. Yeah. But impose your deadline. I think Doug was on your podcast as well, saying like, don't leave it to the last minute, right? Everyone has the bad habit of like, oh well, I have 2 months, I can wait until later. But like, self-impose a deadline for yourself, and stick to that. That's what I'm trying to do. By the 11th is when I'm hoping to have my comment up. So
I guess that's why I worked on mine. Before we even could post a comment, I worked on crafting mine, because I wanted to make sure that I got something up.
Right.
And
it's excellent to point to, right, as well, because you can be like, hey, I've made my comment as well, and now I have these other things. I'm learning from you making those comments, so thank you for doing it.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I mean, we're all learning from each other, and that's something that's so great about this community, is that we all have the same focus, and that is protecting people from harm. And that's why we speak out and do what we do. Well, Dave, I want to say Thank you so very much for your time, and thank you for everybody who participated in the chat and made
Yes,
comments, and thank you big time to my moderators who had kind of a
resolve.
thing going on there. You guys handled things beautifully. I couldn't do this with just me. So thank you so much. And I am going to take tomorrow off, but we'll be back on Monday, which I'll probably look into telex free. I have a whole bunch of content about that. And Ash Mufara had been involved in telex free. And we haven't
Mm,
really kind of, gone down that path to see, well, what is this all about? So it's kind of like a live dive where I just kind of do the research, live
excellent.
and we talk about it. And
Stuart McMillan and the Monet crew. I'm sure you'll get some people interested in that as well. So that's
and
great.
I'm sorry, do what?
Stuart McMillan, the president or CEO, I always get that confused about what's going on in Monet, the hair care brand. Like Stuart
Yeah,
McMillan
yeah.
was part of Telex Free as well. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
right. So I mean, you can also sort of not kill two birds with one stone, but cover those bases. Let's say.
Yeah, I
Um,
will look that up.
yeah.
Wow. Anyway,
I
I want
mean,
to
they're all
thank
part of the same group, right? Yes.
and just hold on for a moment. We'll say our goodbyes after I end the stream and everything. But thank you, everyone. So have a wonderful rest of your evening. And don't forget, you are beautiful and I love you.